Dorotabo is an ugly, disgusting, disgraceful orphan farm boy who works at his aunt's smelly village innkeep, doing pointless chores around the yard and plowing the fields like an absolute loser, managing the livestock there all day long. But one day, his life suddenly changed when a detective visited the inn to investigate some paranormal activities. In the opening scene, we see a group of boys who are walking back from school with their best friend, who is named Yatero and is the son of the innkeeper owner. Yatero flexes to his friends about the new visitor at their inn, who is coming all the way from Tokyo, and said that he would also soon move to the city with him to study how to be a detective himself. But as they pass by the inn, the boys make fun of Dorotabo, the weird boy always plowing the fields near the inn before running off to their homes. Detective Inugami is now arriving, who is making his way towards the inn, gets a flat tire along the way, and is stuck in the middle of nowhere. Luckily, the innkeeper was just returning from her outing. She stops near him and picks him up. On their way to the inn, she tells him all the horrible things happening with her livestock. According to her story, something weird was eating out the organs of her livestock and leaving their corpses in the most horrid state imaginable. Inugami assures her he'll get to the bottom of things and sort them out in time. The duo gets to the inn, and Inugami settles into his room after getting his stuff inside. The innkeeper provides him with tea and he relaxes in front of the crop fields. At that moment, Inugami looks around at the field and he finds Dorotabo working as hard as he can. He tries talking to him, but Dorotabo doesn't give two shits about him and continues with his work. Inugami ignores him as well and takes a bath in the in-house hot spring at the inn. Yatero stops by, introduces himself to their guest, and offers to wash his back. While at it, Yatero gets very chatty with Inugami, who just seems to be enjoying the treatment. Inugami asks about Dorotabo, and Yatero badmouths him. Inugami suddenly gets interested in this weird dirty boy and immediately ends his bath. Later that night after the bath, Inugami gets back home and requests the innkeeper to see Dorotabo instead of Yatero. So the next morning, the innkeeper makes sure Dorotabo gets a full bath before taking him to see Inugami. After cleaning himself up, Dorotabo gets to see Inugami. He serves him some breakfast and prepares to leave. However, Inugami pulls him back and asks for some real information on what's really happening to the livestock on the farm. Doro informs him about the 6 animals that perished in the assault. His account aligns with the innkeeper's narrative. The creature feasts on the organs of the animals, leaving behind gruesome corpses for the farmers to handle before the upcoming full moon. Inugami acknowledges that they have 5 days left until the next full moon and expresses gratitude for the information. Upon the innkeeper's return from her grocery errand, she discovers Inugami assisting Doro in clearing out gutters. Yatero, accompanied by his friends, happened to pass by the scene and was surprised to see such an impressive individual enjoying time with Doro, of all people. Anyways, a few days pass with Doro having the time of his life with Inugami, who seems to be enjoying every last bit of it. One day, as they were working in the field together, Inugami asked Doro about the stone hanging around in his neck. So the orphan explained that he has worn it ever since he was a child, and it was probably given to him by his parents who abandoned him. However, after some thorough inspection, Inugami realized that stone was actually a super rare life stone, so he thought about stealing it from Doro. Just kidding, my man Inugami ain't some lowly thief. He did however realize that Doro is a very special child. He smokes a cigarette and promises to help Doro find his parents. It's the full moon that night, and Doro gets outside to wait for Inugami. Yatero, who's been jealous of Doro getting all the attention from Inugami, confronts him and yanks his life stone from his neck. But at that moment, Doro gets out of control and punches Yatero. When Yatero gets back up, he finds Doro's face already hideous and monster-like. Doro was inches away from taking Yatero out. However, Yatero escapes his grasp and leaves the life stone behind. Doro picks the life stone and changes back to a normal human. After a while, Inugami finds Doro sitting alone in the dark. Doro explained to him that he was the culprit behind the paranormal activities and that he was a monster. However, what came next was not expected at all. Inugami lowered down his pants and turned around to show Doro something. No, it's not what you think It was actually a real tale behind him. So Inugami explained that apparently, Doro is a kimono, in other words, a ghoul just like Inugami. The only difference now is that Doro possesses demon and human-like traits since he's a hybrid from both a ghoul and a human. He also explained that his life stone prevents him from attacking people impulsively. Doro now understands what all his life was about. Just then, he remembers that Yatero was still outside and not protected. At that moment, Yatero runs towards the inn, thinking about the kind of monster Doro could be. He remembered in a flashback that many years ago, he had actually killed Doro accidentally, and yet Doro had come back for lunch unscathed. Just before he finds his way in, he gets attacked by the two ghouls eating up the livestock. Luckily for him, Inugami and Doro arrive on time. Doro doesn't hesitate to chop its head off, which impresses Inugami. However, the real monster awaited them in the bushes, and suddenly, the huge deer monster appeared. Inugami fired shots at it, but the powerful beast healed up like it was nothing. So Inugami explained that ghouls don't just die from normal attacks until their head is severed. At that moment, Doro stepped up and with just one punch, he tore off the beast's head like a piece of paper, once again impressing Inugami. With the monsters gone, Inugami and Doro carry an unconscious Yataro back to the inn. On the way, Doro realizes he can't really stay there anymore now that Yataro knows about his true form. They will pin all the occurrences on him. Inugami realizes something. Since he was called upon to kill Doro, he decides to go forward with it, knowing full well Doro wouldn't die completely. Doro accepts his fate, and Inugami kills him by shooting him in the head. He returned to the inn with an unconscious Yataro and a dead Doro. The innkeeper cried as she saw the situation. Inugami took permission to dispose of his body and took him away from the inn. Doro comes back to life in Inugami's car and gets very surprised to be alive. Inugami explains to him ghouls don't die that easily and welcomes him to Tokyo. Inugami takes Doro back to his house and introduces him to his two teenage subordinates, Shiki and Akira. Doro introduces himself to Akira and Shiki by his real name, Kabane. After the necessary introductions, Inugami asks Kabane to work with him. Akira notices the weird smell coming off Kabane and asks her master why he smells that way. Inugami tells her Kabane is an immortal hybrid of a demon and a human, just like Shiki. Shiki gets the wrong vibe from Kabane and keeps talking down on him. He retires to his room for the night, leaving Akira and the remaining guys in the living room. Kabane mistakes Akira for a girl and compliments his beauty. This rubs Akira the wrong way, and he runs away to his room, dejected and sad. Later in the night, Shiki eats pizza for dinner in front of Kabane. He lets Kabane know he doesn't like him one single bit. Still, Kabane refuses to react to his comments. He gives Kabane some pizza to eat for the first time and notices his reaction. Kabane, after eating the pizza slice, compliments the food and leaves Shiki smiling at him for the first time since they met. Shiki and Akira talk about Kabane before sleeping. While Akira is supportive of Kabane, Shiki suggests they bully him. They do talk for a little while, and Akira goes to sleep. Shiki gets up in the middle of the night and roams the house, stalking Kabane. He lays some of his deadly silk webs in the corridor and waits for someone to enter them. Kabane trips on one of Shiki's silk webs and gets stuck. Shiki approaches him and tries to bully him about his parents. Kabane ignores him and forces his way through the silk, injuring himself in the process. The following day, Kabane follows Inugami and the teens to a crime scene. On getting into the affected house, they find out that a mother and her kid are trapped in a room with a swarm of San Shihu 3 corpse bugs. These harmless little critters become harmful when someone of the right blood type is nearby. Inugami thinks about turning his body to steel and then infiltrating the bug house so he doesn't get eaten. However, it's too risky as it'll take a longer time to get his entire body transformed to steel. Shiki decides to shoot his sticky silk threads into the room and have the bugs attach themselves to them so they can be trapped. This doesn't work, as the bugs shake themselves off the threads. As they wonder what to do, Kabane decides to get into the room himself and take the bugs out himself. Since immortal ghouls like himself don't feel any pain, he should be fine. Kabane gets into the room and turns on the light bulb, banishing the bugs from the room. Inugami congratulates Kabane for helping take out the bugs with the victims' lives intact. Later in the day, the elder brother of the house thanks Inugami and his team for helping him save his mother. He then goes on to talk about his family's sob story, not leaving out how poor they are and how they have to steal things sometimes to survive. Inugami tells the boy to stay strong and work hard to keep his family up and running so he can be well. After the boy leaves, Inugami officially welcomes Kabane to the team and even offers to pay him while he searches for his parents. At home, Shiki finally has a nice conversation about his family with Kabane. Apparently, Shiki's mother was a spider woman who made it with a human and gave birth to the hybrid Shiki. Kabane tells him although they are abandoned, he still has a feeling their parents are alive somewhere just waiting for their return. Shiki gets grumpy again but listens to Kabane's words this time. When they're done, he takes Kabane to his room to rest. In the meantime, Inaguni receives a call from a lady and explains some things about Kabane and his life stone to her. The following day, Inugami tells the teens to take Kabane to go see Inari, the Kitsun Kimono, and superintendent of the police department. Shiki gets very annoyed as he hates Inari's guts. Akira, on the other hand, gets flustered and tells Kabane about all the wonderful places they could visit on their way to the police station. Before going in, Inugami gives Kabane a good luck charm before letting them go. Elsewhere, Inari arrives at the police station and shows off her irresistible beauty to the men there. She gets full of herself as the men fall head over heels for her. The kids eventually get to the Shinjuku police station and approach the receptionist for an audience with Inari. The receptionist tries to chase them away, but a lady named Kon gets downstairs and takes only Kabane up to the superintendent Inari's meeting room. On getting there, Inari welcomes Kabane and introduces herself and Kon before getting to the nitty-gritty of the meeting. She chit-chats a little bit about Inugami and asks Kabane about his life stone. Kabane tells her he has his life stone there with him, and she requests to have a look at it. Kabane gives it to her, and she holds it. Inari gets very happy to hold the life stone. Then she explains the history between herself and Inugami, not forgetting to mention how controversial they both were with each other. She tells Kabane that if she could mass-produce the life stone on his neck, then the kimonos won't have to feed off human energy anymore. She instructs Kon to cut off Kabane's head, and she does it almost immediately. She carries his head and puts it in a briefcase. Then she tells Kon to pick up the heavy briefcase and drop it in her office before leaving. Inari tells Kon to make sure she takes care of Shiki and Akira before they catch on to what was happening. Kon thanks her for her mercy and picks up the briefcase. She shape-shifts into Kabane and heads downstairs to trick Akira and Shiki into letting their guard down for easy termination. Unfortunately, this doesn't work as the kids catch on to her disguise and expose her as a kid. Soon realizing she's been made, Kon changes back to her original form and sets the entire lobby on fire to kill the kids. Shiki and Akira run for dear life as Kon keeps throwing fireballs at them without a care in the world. Shiki manages to yank the briefcase out of Kon's hands. He opens it to find Kabane's head in there and gets shocked. Akira faints, leaving Shiki alone to fight the angry Kon. Shiki carries Kabane's head and knocks out Akira and hides them out of Kon's sight. Kabane thanks him for helping him and devises a plan to take out Kon completely. He tells Shiki to throw his head towards Kon so he could land a bite strong enough to knock her out. Shiki reluctantly throws Kabane's head, and the plan works. With Calm down, everything goes back to normal, and the fires are put out. Kabane grows another body from his head and puts some clothes on. Shiki fist bumps Kabane to celebrate their win against Kon. Then they retrieve Akira and head out of the station to meet Inugami already there waiting for them. Meanwhile, Inari, who's on her way back home, finds out the life stone Kabane gave her was a dud. Inugami gave him the real one previously. Inugami calls her and gloats about outsmarting her once again, and Inari gets so frustrated that she kills her Uber driver. In another part of town, Inugami decides to host a welcome party for Kabane to formally welcome him to the team. Team Shiki and Akira get very excited about the party and contemplate the best food option. In an alleyway, Kon is seen walking tirelessly as she continues her search to find Kabane and deliver his head to her master Inari. After the party, Inugami takes the kids to the kimono signage, which attracts kimonos around town to get missions. As they check the light out, Kon finds them and passes out. Inugami takes her home and feeds her some pizza. Kon still tries taking Kabane's head right there, but Inugami manages to sit her down as they discuss what to do with Kon. Someone else enters the bar after being drawn there by the lights outside. As Inugami attends to the drunk customer, Kabane and the others discuss Inugami's history with the bar. As they discuss, they hear the customer rambling about a certain woman he hasn't met before but loves with all his heart. Inugami and the others try to get more information about this woman, but the customer tells them he doesn't know anything about her. She and Akira talk a little bit about love. Kabane gets confused and asks Inugami what love truly means. Inugami freezes on the spot and gives a rather vague answer. He then assigns the mission to Kabane and the other 3 kids with him. The customer, later identified as Yaruno, sees a rat creeping around the bar. Almost immediately, he turns into a feline and jumps at the rat to capture it. After capturing it, he puts it in his bag filled with other dead rats and licks himself like a cat. Akira gets creeped out and rushes to clean himself. Inugami follows him to the restroom and reassigns him to another job in his office so he doesn't get too irritated. Akira thanks him and allows the others to go. Shiki, Kon, and Kabane, alongside the customer, get to an adult shop to find Yaruno's crush after her shift ends. She still doesn't show up. Shiki and his peers, however, see a suspicious-looking cat walking out of one of the showrooms. They all follow the cat and expose it in an alleyway. The cat materializes into a beautiful woman and introduces herself as Mao. She gets really sassy and smug after finding her seduction spell working on Yaruno. Kon jumps on Mao's head and catches her by surprise. She presents the female cat to Yaruno for his taking. Yaruno gets very emotional and confesses his feelings for Mao-chan. After hearing all he had to say, Mao gets very flustered and stares at Yaruno, putting surprise in her eyes. Later that night, Shiki and the others get back home thinking about how Mao would treat their customer after hearing all he had to say. When they get home, Inugami gives Kon a fake head resembling that of Kabane and sends her back to Inari, her master. The next day, Inugami receives news that the cat Mao and Yaruno actually got together. Now that's rather impressive or weird. Anyways, Shiki gets tired of thinking too hard about things. Akira, on the other hand, seems very impressed with Kabane's interface appearance. In the matter, she decides to become Kabane's apprentice and lets Inugami know about it in their next meeting. Inugami accepts his decision and gives them another job. This time they're investigating a case of unnatural deaths of the workers in the river flowing under Shibuya sewers. Akira gets freaked out hearing the sound of death and takes a break while he takes a bath. Inugami fills Kabane in on some information about the river. Akira finishes his bath and follows Kabane to the sewer tunnels. Akira keeps freaking out at every turn they take as they find creepy creatures all around them. Kabane takes care of the creatures and leads Akira further into the sewers, bearing his talkative nature. As they search for clues, Kabane asks Akira if he has powers he could show him. Akira tells him he can freeze water at the surface. Kabane asks him to try showcasing his powers to him. As he's about to do so, a slimy wild animal attacks him. Luckily for them, a tanuki saves them from the animals and hands them a vial of blood and a letter from Inugami. They open the letter and find out the slimy animals that attacked them earlier are the frog kimono that grew a baron after eating humans. Now equipped with more information, Kabane and Akira pour the blood into the river beneath them and wait for the monsters to show. Soon, the frog kimono reacts to the blood in the water and attacks Kabane and Akira. The tanuki there helps fight some of the frogs. However, Akira gets too scared and cowers in a corner. With a little more motivation, he activates his power and freezes the frog kimono. The tanuki slips out of their sight to talk to the elder frog, who apologizes for his frog's uncanny behaviors towards his people. It's then revealed that the tanuki is Inugami in his real kimono state. He accepts the frog's apology and heads back to his people who seem to be busy taking pictures. It's another normal day in Tokyo with Inugami and his team doing some thorough house cleaning. Kabane finds the secret door behind the hallway that Inugami warned him never to touch. He gets too close to the door and gets drawn into it for a few hours. When Inugami and the others find out he's missing, they search a little and find him in the room behind the forbidden door. There, they find Kabane serving the age-old vampire Kimono Mihai. Mihai introduces himself to the kids and appoints Kabane as his new slate. Inugami takes the kids back to the living room and tells them about Mihai's history. Apparently, Mihai is a vampire who acquired too much knowledge in his lifetime and became bored with life. As a result, he sought solitary confinement behind a computer. Inugami took him in to have a mutual agreement with him. While Mihai works the tech stuff, Inugami lets him stay in the house and feeds him. After hearing all this, Shiki still decides it's wrong to enslave Kabane against his will. Later that day, he teams up with Akira and confronts Mihai on his plan to keep Kabane as his slave. Mihai proposes they settle things the old-fashioned way. He challenges Shiki to an arm wrestling matchup. If Shiki wins, he will release Kabane, otherwise, he gets to keep him. Shiki arm wrestles Mihai several times but keeps getting defeated every single time. Kabane decides to try his luck. He uses all his strength to wrestle him but still loses to the vampire. Following the matchup, Kabane hits the streets to buy some supper for the family. On his way back, he sits on an outdoor bench and thinks about progress. Just then, Kon falls from a tree above Kabane. Kon tells Kabane her sob story of how she was abandoned by Inari. Kabane challenges her to a fight and ends up beating her. Kon doesn't take the failure well as she cries like a baby. Kabane pets her and picks her up. In the meantime, Mihai leaves his room to meet Inugami. Despite winning the match, Kabane still managed to break Mihai's hands, so he has up to a week or so until it heals. He asks to help out with Inugami's work. A few hours later, by nighttime, Kabane was still on the bench as he woke Kon up and asked her if she would like to stay with Inugami. Kon tells him she can't live with a tanuki like Inugami. Kabane remembers he has to deliver dinner to the others, so he ups and leaves and promises to get back to Kon when he's done. On getting home, Shiki, Akira, and Kabane find Mihai handling Inugami's computer. They ask for Inugami's whereabouts, but Mihai tells them he's attending to something else. Mihai takes the kids to a hot room to train before taking them on their next mission. This time, Shiki and his peers are to infiltrate a suspicious company named Bug Bite Electronics, whose higher-ups have been secretly killing their employees and passing the murders as suicides. Shiki uses his arachnid powers to find a way into the company. He uses his new ability and blends into his environment. There he finds a small remote-controlled toy car Mihai owned. The toy car is to be his partner during the mission. While Akira and Kabane wait outside the company, Shiki finds a room packed with dozens of overworked employees working tirelessly. One of them freaks out and rushes towards the corridor to meet the manager, Kaga. She sympathizes with him and takes him to a room where she exposes him to her fellow mosquito kimono. Shiki follows them and watches the mosquito kimono suck out a portion of the worker's brain before leaving him half alive to continue working. Mihai goes over to ask Inugami what the mosquito kimono is all about. Inugami, who's locked behind Mihai's door, tells him the mosquito kimono feeds on either organs, blood, or brains. However, since the company has a bad reputation for killing its workers, they decided to eat brains to keep them alive. Mihai gets bored and decides to switch things up a little. He makes noises in the corridor with his toy car and exposes Shiki. The girls check out the source of the noise. One of them senses something wrong but then misleads the others, only to come back to Shiki and eat up his brains. Shiki freezes up after being attacked by the mosquito kimono. Luckily for him, Mihai shocks the girl with his toy car till she passes out. Even after Mihai shocked the mosquito girl in front of him, Shiki still freezes up. Turns out he has PTSD from a traumatic event during his childhood that he couldn't remember. Meanwhile, Mihai hurries Kabane and Akira to find a way into the building and get to Shiki while there's still time. They find an entrance in the building's garage, but one of the mosquito sisters blocks their way forward. In the meantime, Mihai, in his own way, speaks some words of encouragement to Shiki, telling him to get up if he's going to survive. Still, Shiki remains frozen in place. Kabane and Akira take care of the sister mosquito blocking earlier, and proceed further into the building. They also try their best to encourage Shiki to fight on. Mihai says more hurtful words and gives Shiki all the motivation he needs to fight back the mosquito sister who already woke up from the shock. Shiki devises a plan and completely merges it into the walls and ceiling. He spreads his scent everywhere in the room and lures the mosquito kimono to amplify her vision. Once she does, she searches the entire room for Shiki but doesn't find him. When she's already deep into his trap, Shiki shows his face and entraps the mosquito lady in his web. When she's fully covered in webs, Shiki knocks her out and lays down to rest a little. Kabane and Akira join her with the other mosquito sister. Shiki ties her up in his web alongside her sister and keeps talking about their next lead. As they contemplate their next move, the elder sister and manager, Kaga, approaches them. She brings out her own suckers and sucks the brains out of her sister's heads. She then metamorphosizes into a full mosquito kimono and attacks the teens in front of her. Kabane goes for her vitals first, but the mosquito is just too strong. She punctures his chest and holds him up. Shiki tries to save his friend but ends up getting blown away by the mosquito's legs. The same thing happens with Akira as he's knocked out in seconds. Kabane refuses to give up as he keeps struggling to get out of the mosquito's grasp. Mihai notices this happening, so he tells Kanabi to try using his kimono strength to overpower the mosquito. Kanabi reaches into his inner self and rips Kaga's hands out of her body after accessing his kimono strength. Now that Kaga is incapacitated, Kabane looks to remove her legs, so she remains immobilized for a while. However, Inugami cuts in on the radio feed and tells him to leave the rest to an Ares team. Just as Kabane is about to protest Inugami's decision, a blonde dude who works for Inari and is named Navamaru walks by to clean things up. He introduces himself and gets right to burning the mosquito bodies to a crisp. In his words, he is getting rid of evidence. Once he's done, Nabamaru tells him to get right home and cater to his friends. Kabane thanks him for his help and starts waking his friend up. However, Nabamaru lets him in on a little secret. From the looks of things, Neri still hasn't given up on her search for Kabane's lifestone. Nabamaru was sent there to investigate his lifestone. Kabane thanks him and asks him why he would betray his master like that. Turns out, Nabamaru hates Inari's guts. On getting home, Mihai tells them he had to give them such a tough mission, unlike Inugami's missions, so they'll grow. Inugami himself admits he's impressed by the way they handled the mission. Mihai retraces his steps to his hidden room and tells Inugami to expect him outside more often. By midnight, Kabane wakes up and listens to his colleagues' hearts. The next day, Kabane keeps following Shiki all around the house. After complaining, Kabane stops. He then remembers Khan, who was waiting for him by the bench from the previous day. Kabane rushes to the same bench and meets Khan there waiting for him. He tells her the truth, he forgot about their appointment and apologizes to her. Khan had caught some Khan fish for both of them to eat, but since he was a no-show, they got spoiled. Shiki musters up enough courage to ask Inugami about his family. In a few days' time, Inugami drives the kids to Shiki's hometown to see his parents. Kabane and Akira are happy for Shiki, who is about to meet his family. But Shiki feels cringe from all the hearty comments his two colleagues had to say about his family. Akira asks if they would be seeing his cool uncle in town. Shiki tells her there's a chance they will. After a long drive, Inugami and the kids finally get to Shiki's hometown. Akira is flustered by all the beautiful things up for sale in the stalls around them. Inugami, on the other hand, leaves them to go find an inn they can settle in. The kids check out a nearby bookstore and get to read fascinating stories. Kabane finds a storybook and reads out the amazing story of the poor kind man who got rich from his hospitality. The oddly realistic Shiki tells them it's an unrealistic story. He sees a little girl staring at him at the entrance and stares back. At that moment, Inugami returns with Shiki's uncle, Tatemari. Tatemari reunites with his nephew and takes the lot down to the river. There he reveals himself as a folklorist and tells them the truth about Shiki's mother. Tatemari tells Shiki he knows his mother is a kimono. As for the rest of the news, Tatemari asks for some privacy from even us, the viewers, and reveals the rest of the truth only to Shiki. A while later, Shiki returns to his people and tells them both his parents are dead. However, instead of having the feeling of grief and letting the tears flow, Shiki keeps a true face and forces himself to be normal. Inugami asks after Tatemari and goes over to join him while the kids get to the inn. In the inn's bathhouse, Nabamaru joins all the boys stark naked and in his kimono mode as a kitsune kimono. Nabamaru advises them to explore the natural features of the town after bathing. Later that night, everyone gets to the river to see the beautiful fireflies. Nabamaru apologies for intruding on their affairs and congratulates Kobane for the weirdest reason. Kabane leaves him to himself and joins Shiki, who is busy staring at a big tree. He stares hard at the tree and recognizes a path he used to pass through when he was younger. He retraces his steps and rushes toward the end of the path and finds the house which terrified him several years back. Shiki approaches the house in the dark and opens the door. It was then he remembered his trauma again. Apparently, that was the house where he found his mother as she was being eaten alive by the monster that killed her. While he lies down scared, Nabamaru and Kabane catch up to him and talk about the healing silk causing a problem in the kimono community. Ainari had noticed this and blacklisted someone named Tatemari who was only to profit greedily from the qualities of the healing silk. In the meantime, Inugami visits Tatemari to have a discussion with him. Shiki suddenly remembers who hit his head after finding out about the horrible incident that happened to his mother. So, it turns out, Tatemari murdered Shiki's mother, who was a natural producer of the healing silk, from his greed. Tatemari decided to take all the silk for himself, so he took her out. Shiki decides to make his uncle pay for what he does. Kobane and Nabamaru promise to help him take such a filthy person on a walk through the forest. Inugami asks Tatemari to explain what really happened back then and how he got to know about the gold web treasures. So after Shiki's dad died, Tatemari tricked Shiki's mother, Kumi, to undergo a series of inhumane tests just so they could artificially produce the golden silk. Unfortunately, after some tests, Humi died, and Shiki was there to witness it. Tatemari admits he feels no remorse about it and was only focused on perfecting the silk and becoming the most remarkable man in the world. Inugami already got all the information he needed, so he asks Shiki to come out of his hiding place and pass judgment. Shiki makes sure to punish his uncle slowly. Now that he's been caught, Tatemari begs Shiki to spare his life. Unfortunately, it's too late. Shiki makes sure to tighten the silk around his uncle's neck more and forbids him from justifying his horrendous act. Tatemari begs Inugami for mercy, but Inugami leaves things in Shiki's hands. Akira finally finds them after she was abandoned by the group somewhere else. While she whines and complains about being left behind, a monster kimono attacks her. Inugami shoots the head off and engages in a fight with it. The thing bites his hand and infuses it with its venom. Inugami's arm gets paralyzed by the venom, and more of the monsters appear. Tomorrow lets off a smug look on his face and tells Shiki that the monsters are his siblings. He confesses that the weird chimera monsters were born from the experiments he conducted on his mother back in the day. Shiki cannot believe the atrocities before his face. He breaks down and loses his will to fight. Nabamaru notices this and asks Kabane what he plans to do about the matter. Kabane, who was already seething with rage, accesses his inner power and asks Shiki what he would like to do. A helpless Shiki only asked Kobane to help him out. Kabane gets the memo and prepares for a big fight. Inugami and Akira are cornered to prevent the poison from spreading. Inugami asks Akira to freeze his infected arm for him. Akira freaks out, but the young lady staring at Shiki back then at the bookstore arrives and offers to help them. Elsewhere, Kabane keeps bashing the heads of Shiki's supposed siblings. Maru asks how he can confidently kill Shiki's siblings without a care in the world. Kabane tells him he would keep taking out the monsters if it meant killing Maru. Maru summons the biggest sibling Shubi and sends him toward Kabane. Kabane gets really serious and removes his shirt to allow for more room in the fight. Kabane jumps up and smashes Shubi's face to the ground. The young girl takes Inugami to a detoxifying spring to get his hand healed up. Inugami dips his infected arm in the water and heals it. The girl begs him not to kill Maru yet because she has something to ask him. Kobane, however, finishes all the monsters protecting Maru. He picks Maru up and leaves his punishment in the hands of Shiki himself. Shiki gets up and thanks his friend for helping him with his dirty business. He becomes the big man and refuses to kill his uncle. Just then, the young girl Aya and Inugami arrive and beg Shiki to spare Maru. Maru gets very worked up and scolds Aya for coming to the forest. Aya shushes him and asks him where he hid the cocoon she made. Maru smiles and uses his knowledge of the cocoon's location as a bargaining chip to stay alive. Shiki begins to wonder who Aya truly is and what she meant to his uncle. He recalls a moment he had with his uncle when he was drunk years ago. Maru is a person who's too concerned about leaving something of value behind. This means Aya couldn't possibly be his daughter. Still, Shiki wonders who she could be. Aya refuses to give out her true identity as she fears that others would reject her. Inugami steps in and tells her not to worry, that he's been tracking Maru for a while now and probably knows a thing or two about the cocoon's location. He takes out his phone and calls Mihai. After he picks up, Inugami tells Mihai to check Maru's database to see whether or not he had been hiding something for the past years. Right in front of everyone, Mihai checks through the database and finds out about a secret place he usually goes to on occasion, a spring in the mountains of Kishigo. Aya suddenly remembers the spring when Inugami got his hand healed and rushes there to search for her cocoon. Shiki follows her and helps her dive into the spring to search for his mother's flowers and the cocoon itself. At the bottom of the spring, he finds his mother's body laying there untouched. One of the siblings, Tadamaru, placed there to guard the body, attacks Shiki, but he kills it before it gets to him. Shiki takes out the sibling and resurfaces. He asks Aya for the truth, is his mom still alive? Aya cries and tells him yes. Aya then confesses to being the golden webbing offspring. Inugami and the others join them. Maru tells them he was just planning to use Kumi's body to mass produce the golden webbing. Shiki knocks him out and carries his mother and Aya to Inugami's car. On getting there, they find out Tadamaru slipped away from their hands. Inugami tells them not to worry about him and get in the car so they can get to Tokyo quickly. At that moment, Tadamaru drags himself to a tree and promises to start over. This time Nabamaru catches up to him and incinerates him. Inugami takes Shiki's mother to a clinic he knows and asks for the clinic owner, Ohana. Ohana receives Kumi and checks her out. She finds nothing wrong with Kumi and tells everyone she needs some rest. Akira asks Ohana if she's a kimono. However, Inugami tells him Ohana is a human veterinarian who accidentally found out about kimonos and began treating them. Ohana takes the others outside to show them her bathhouse and leaves Shiki alone with his mother. Shiki stays near his mother all through the night. Late in the night, Aya walks up to Kumi's room. She's reluctant to knock on the door because she feels she isn't worthy enough to call Kumi her mother, even though she's a direct offspring of her. She recalls how horrible she was treated by Tadamaru, who forced her to live in a basement room all her life. Shiki notices Aya by the door and asks her to come to see her mother. Aya treads carefully and asks Shiki whether or not he hated her for real. Shiki tells her his mother is alive because of her cocoon, so he practically owes her his thanks for keeping his mother alive for him. Aya cries and asks if she could call them her family. Shiki freezes up out of cringe. At that moment, Hume wakes up in the cocoon web a week later. The detective teen had been reduced to Inugami, Akira, and Kabane, as Shiki chose to stay behind and help his mother recover to her full strength. Akira doesn't take the news well, but she has no choice but to let him do his thing. One morning after breakfast, Inugami dishes out some work to Kabane and Akira. Shiki arrives at that moment to tell them he's now back from his mission. Aya also shows up in a complete makeover. She introduces herself and continues to tell Inugami she's starting her own cheminopathy clinic where she uses the power of her silk to treat kimonos. Inugami gets right down to business and helps her draft a plan. Shiki tries his very best to stop his sister from doing such a thing, but things were moving too fast for his pace. After getting her business plan, Aya rushes to Kabane and asks him out on the spot. Apparently, Ida had fallen for Kabane after their big fight with Teimaru's bodyguards. Before Kabane could give an answer, Kon arrives and asks Kabane to fight her. She sighs at the pink-haired shorty near him and instantly declares war on him. Later on, Inugami shows the kids a news report of an invisible kimono ripping the faces out of the ladies in the street. Akira faints as usual, and Inugami tells the kids they have to investigate the problem. Aya quickly opts to follow Kabane to the place. Kon gets jealous and tags along too. On getting there, Kon jumps the gun and tries to impress Kabane. However, things just seem to be against her as it wasn't working. She gets frustrated and wonders why her chest feels mushy. Just then, she hears a voice somewhere but can't find out where. Something invisible pulls Aya by the hair and suspends her in the air. Kabane punches right in front of him, and the thing drops. Aya soon materializes herself and explains the reason why she's been ripping people's faces. From her explanation, she wants to get a pretty face attached to herself so she can ask the handsome boy by the store out. Kabane gets very confused and asks her why. She then proceeds to tell them she pulled Aya by the hair because Kon seemed very sad by Aya holding Kabane's hand. At that moment, Kon reacts the wrong way and tries to bite Aya. Kabane protects Aya, and Kon runs away. That evening, Kabane and Aya get back home after solving the problem. Aya had used her cocoon powers to turn the faceless kimono human, and now she can walk around and stop attacking the people. After reporting the mission, Kabane gets to Kon's treat and finds her crying her eyes out. So, Kon had gotten used to Kabane's warm embrace and was now jealous of Aya being Kabane's favorite. Kabane holds her cheeks and asks if she's fine. Suddenly, Kon stops crying and feels a lot better. She tells Kabane she wishes to be his number one and asks if he already knows who that is. Kabane tells her he really doesn't know yet. She makes him promise to tell her once he knows. Up next, Inugami takes Kumi to pay tribute to her dead husband. She thanks Inugami dearly for taking care of her children. Inugami just tells her to make sure to reconnect with her children. Kon visits Kabane and finds Aya flocking near him. She gets into a fight with Aya over Kabane. Akira steps in and tells Kabane to choose one of the girls to date. Kabane tells them if he's to choose someone he loves, it'll be Inugami. The room goes silent with shock. According to history, Akira is a male Yukiono born alongside his twin brother Yui in the snowy mountains where their clan lives. Now, this is a phenomenon that happens once every 100 years or so. That's where their story began. In the present day, Yui walks the streets of Tokyo searching for his twin brother. He bumps into 3 men on the way and takes them to a corner to get some information about his twin brother. Akira, the guys have no information to give him, so he uses his ice powers to freeze them into icicles. In the meantime, Akira finds out his stuffed piggy's belly had been torn open. Now, there's stuffing everywhere. He cries out loud and asks Inugami to fix it for him. Inugami calls Mihai to help fix Akira's plush pig. Mihai gets it done for him and installs an AI program into the plushie. Akira gets very happy and thanks Mihai for helping him out. He then wonders where his twin brother could be at the moment. He recalls the good times he had with his twin brother Yui. One time when they were younger, Akira and Yui took a stroll in the snowstorm. They were caught by their village elder Hassan and thrown back inside. So it happens that the village kept very close eyes on the boys, seeing as it was an abomination for boys to be born in the village. Yui and Akira never knew their parents and were forced to live behind doors and survive on their own. Inugami returns home that night with some beach sand. He tasks the kids with searching for a person's ashes from the bags of sand. To find the ashes, Akira gets clumsy and falls on the bag. When it's time for supper, Akira cooks some cold noodles for the boys. As time passes, Akira keeps acting like a klutz as he keeps making messes all around the house. Eventually, Akira gets tired of being the problem and leaves the house. Now that he's homeless, Akira finds out he's broke and wanders the streets searching for a place to live. He finds his twin brother by chance on the streets and reunites with him. There's a flashback to their younger days when Yui and Akira promised each other to visit Tokyo one day and live good lives there. Akira follows her brother to an ice cream shop to get some crepe and ice cream. Yui rejects the crepe and gives it to Akira. Meanwhile, the boys get the day off as there's no case for them to solve. He asks Kabane what he thinks about Akira. Kabane tells him although Akira is a klutz, he still misses him. Inugami dismisses him, and Kabane joins Shiki on the couch. There they think about calling Akira back to the house, but Shiki would rather not. By nightfall, Yui takes Sakura to a plain field in the forest. He asks his twin brother where he would like to live, and Akira tells him he always wanted to stay in a nice castle. Just then, Yui uses his incredible ice powers and builds an ice castle. Akira gets very happy at the prettiness of the castle and takes some pictures of the house. Yui seizes his phone and locks him in a room in the castle. Then he walks out and leaves the castle. Shiki and Kabane continue life without Akira. They try cooking up some beef stew but end up burning it to churns. Shiki looks like he misses Akira, but he refuses to show it. He decides to eat the burnt stew like that and sends Kabane to go buy his own dinner. After Kabane is gone, Shiki tries to do some dishes. He ends up getting so angry and breaks one of the plates. Kabane returns shortly and tells Shiki they have to find Akira no matter what. They don't know where to start, but then Inugami checks Akira's social media. There, they find the picture of the ice castle he posted and race toward the castle. There they find some reporters already outside and ready to interview the owner of the ice castle. Upon getting to the castle, Yui steps out of the house and attacks the reporters. Thankfully, Inugami stops him before he harms anyone. He cites the null stone sitting on Yui's chest and explains the use of the stone. While Kabane's life stone stops him from his thirst, the null stone infuses his thirst for death. Yui begins his attack on the lot and immediately creates a snowstorm. In the meantime, Akira uses the AI program and his plushy piggy doll to check out his social media page. He asks his plushy doll why his brother would break his phone and act so cold toward him. The plushy doll tells Akira it noticed some weird signs in his vitals. He probably left some cold stuff compressed to his chest. Just then, Yui opens the room door and asks Akira to come down to check out his surprise for him. Getting down, Akira finds his friends Shiki, Inugami, and Kabane all frozen solid by Yui's ice magic. Akira's face lights up in disgust after seeing his friends frozen solid. Before he gets to say anything, he falls down, and it makes Yui think he's sick. Yui exits the castle to go find some herbs for his brother and leaves him there with Inugami and the others. His plushie tells him he senses a very weird vibe with Yui and just couldn't tell what it was. Suddenly, Akira remembers that Kabane is immortal. While he waits for him to unfreeze himself, he wonders whether or not Inugami would be able to survive the immense cold. Elsewhere, Yui recalls his time in the snowy village after he was separated from his brother Yui. So, it turns out Yui was chosen to be chief of the snowy village as the only able-bodied male present. His life took a downward spiral as he was taught so many dark things he had to keep from his twin brother. In a flashback, an excited younger Akira asks his brother about his first day as chief. Yui ignores him and tells him to leave all the heavy-duty stuff to him. Akira then gives his brother a flower to congratulate him on being named the chief of the village. Yui smiles for a while that night and goes to sleep. The next day in the flashback, Yui is taken to the top of the mountains to see the null stone for the first time. On getting there, he finds out about the jealousy and secret hatred growing between the women of his tribe. Growing up without a female sibling, Yui had little knowledge about them, so he began to resent his village women as jealousy and envy were becoming too much for him. The flashback ends at that point, and Yui returns to the ice castle with some salt and mint herbs for his brother. Akira collects the herb and keeps wondering how he would take him out before it's too late. Right outside the castle, Ainari arrives with Nobamaru to find and retrieve the null stone. At that moment, Kabane breaks out of his frozen state and regenerates his lost limbs. After putting on his pants, he talks about his interest in the null stone and snowy village. Kabane promises to save Akira from his brother, even if it means fighting him with all his strength. Akira fears his brother's strength, so he pretends not to need Kabane's help. He tells Kabane that he doesn't need his help and likes staying with his brother better. Just then, his brother returns from his outing with some more salt. This time, Akira abandons his previous team and decides to lead with his brother and follow him somewhere else. On his way out, he freezes his tears and bids Kabane farewell before leaving. Akira's idol calls on Kabane and tells him to sprinkle some of the salt on his friends so they can thaw faster. Kabane does just that and waits for his friends to come back to life. Nori finally makes her appearance and tricks Kabane into helping her retrieve the null stone. In the meantime, Akira and his twin keep searching for a new place to live in the forest. Akira reminds him of the last time they took a stroll back when they were much younger. Akira is seen asking his brother to let him know about his pain. However, Yui refuses to share his pain with Akira due to his weakness and pureness of heart. Akira protests and tells his brother that he had his first wet dream the previous night. Yui seizes this and fears the women would take advantage of Akira's development and install him as a figurehead chief and banish him. He couldn't let himself or his brother be used like that, so Yui convinced the entire 200 women in the village to banish Akira for the village's benefit. Thankfully, his plan works, and Akira is banished from the snowy village. Before he leaves, Yui tells Akira to find a man named Inugami in Tokyo. After he's gone, Yui returns to the village and overhears the women talking about the assassin they sent after Akira. He rushes towards Hisan, the head female of the village, and confronts her. Hisan captures him and leaves him for dead. However, Yui escapes and rushes to the Null Stone. As Yui gets back to reality, he finds out Nobamaru was stalking them. Meanwhile, Ainari keeps stalling Kabane until Inugami, who can now talk, tells Kabane to just ignore her and go after Akira. Healing, Kabane leaves and begins tracking them both. Yui, on the other hand, puts his brother in a cage and prepares to fight Nobamaru, who is now fully transformed into his Kitsune form and ready to get the Null Stone. The fight for the Null Stone becomes very heated as Nobamaru goes all out to get it. At one point, Yui gets distracted and leaves an opening for Nobamaru. Nobamaru gets close enough to touch the stone, but his hands freeze off due to the extreme cold. Yui catches him slacking off and throws some icicles toward him. Just as Nobamaru is about to get hit, Kabane arrives and destroys the icicle. Nobamaru updates Kabane on the current situation surrounding his fight with Yui and tells him about his new plan to take him down. Akira is seen struggling to free himself from the cage when he sees a light in the fog. Apparently, Nobamaru lit Kabane on fire just so he could get hot enough to melt Yui's ice. Seeing as his body could regenerate itself, he doesn't really have much to worry about getting burnt. This plan works after landing the first few hits on Yui. However, things change when Yui draws more of his life force and exchanges it for power from his Null Stone. Akira uses the water in the fog around him to form an ice ball big enough to break the cage he was in. Kabane, after realizing what was happening, asks Nobamaru to increase the temperature of the flame. Nobamaru fears he may burn out from overheating. Still, Kabane tells him to do it. Once his core temperature is increased, Kabane prepares for a final strike to end Yui once and for all. Just as he's about to land his fatal blow, Akira gets in the way and protects his brother. Kabane's body burns out from the heat, and he crumbles into ashes with only his skull remaining. Nobamaru explains the situation to Akira, and as Kabane's skull begins to regenerate, he is able to talk. Kabane tells Akira that his brother would die very soon if the Null Stone isn't removed quickly. Akira gets very emotional and removes the Null Stone from his brother. While he's at it, he gets his brother's memories. Apparently, after escaping the women, Yui got to the Null Stone and begged it to grant him the power to find his brother. He cries softly for his half-dead brother and tries to remove the stone. Kabane, who's already received half of his body, fuses his own life stone with Yui's Null Stone and pulls it out. Ainari appears right at that moment and picks up the stone. Just then, Inugami shows up and tells her to drop it since the resulting stone still belongs to Kabane. To avoid unnecessary fights, Ainari drops the stone and leaves. A few hours later, everyone gets back home. Akira makes sure to apologize to Kabane for his actions back in the castle. Kabane gets happy and rejoices with him. Later on, Yui wakes up and finds everyone by his side. Kabane shows Yui the new stone formed and asks if it could lead him to his parents. Yui and Inugami telling the history of Kimono and the wars that led them to the point they're in. After the story, Inugami and Yui conclude that Kabane's mother must have been an important village chief who passed down the life stone to him while leaving him behind. So to find her, they have to check all around Japan for clues. Elsewhere, Inari cooks up another plan to recover the life and Null Stone from Kabane's hands. She discusses her new plan with Nobamaru and tells him to go forward with it. In the meantime, Yui confesses his horrible crime to his brother. He claims he took them out of the snowy village to end their clan and find his brother. Still, Akira and the others forgive him and welcome him home. Yui smiles again for the first time and accepts his younger brother. Akira gets very happy and takes pictures. Later that night, Nobamaru meets up with Kon at the tree she stays at and assigns her a new mission. She is to get closer to Kabane and charm him into giving her his life stone. Akira and the boys approach Meha,